Yes, the Devils need defense. Yes, the Devils need goaltending. But don't forget, they still need to add more depth when it comes to forwards. What do I mean by that? We have a lot to break down in today's episode of Locked On Devils. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Scores! Oh, Stevens stepped up, nailed him. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here on Locked On Network. I'm your host, college hockey play-by-play announcer, Devils writer for Pucks and Pitchforks, and also part-time credential media member, Trey Matthews. In today's episode, I'm going to do something that I don't think I've ever done in the history of my show. We're going to talk some silly season, but we're going to take a spin on it. I'm going to talk about 3 potential candidates that could join the Devils this offseason. But here's the thing. We're going to talk about some familiar faces. There are some needs that need to be filled for the Devils, but there's this old saying, there's no place like home, so why not reunite with a few of these players, because we already know what they could potentially bring to the organization. We know their strengths. We know their weaknesses. We know what combo they can thrive in. We know what they can bring from a personality standpoint. There's all sorts of factors. And I've talked about this in a prior episode with Tyler Toffoli. Now, here's the thing. With Tyler Toffoli, I felt as though he was a good player. But he's not really a need. He's more of a want. Because for Toffoli, he sort of needs to play on the top 6. He kind of ate away some minutes that could have been given to Dawson Mercer, Alexander Holtz, or Timo Meier. And once Toffoli was dealt to Winnipeg, we saw the surgence of both Mercer and Meier. And it really showcased that they were being somewhat held back due to what was in front of them. And like I said, Toffoli, for what it's worth, I think he is a good player, but I just don't think he fills a need for New Jersey. But we do need to discuss, what do the Devils need? I've been talking about it religiously on this show the past few weeks. They need more defensive depth, and they also need a better goaltending tandem. I'm open to bring back Jake Allen as the backup option, and he has 1 year remaining on his contract, so that's not really a choice. But Jake Allen can't be the go-to guy in my eyes. You need to find someone a little bit better. But let's focus on the offense. And I know I've been talking about how offense isn't really the issue for New Jersey, but here's something that they do need. They do, in fact, need some more depth in terms of forwards. And why is that? Well, after Michael McLeod took his quote-unquote leave of absence from the team, you kind of saw the beginning of the end for the Devils. With all due respect, if I just focus on this from a hockey perspective, Michael McLeod, he did bring a lot to the Devils. He was good in the face-off department. He knew how to work the corners. He knew how to work the dirty areas. We saw his offensive game grow. His defense was there. And once he was no longer a part of the roster, that really hurt the Devils in terms of their depth. And remember, when Nico Hischier went down with his injury, it was Michael McLeod who stepped up into that role. And that's sort of what the Devils need. They need someone who isn't afraid to play those dirty areas, someone who's good in the faceoff department. And Tom Fitzgerald was actually asked this question during his respective exit interview. Is he open to bring back Michael McLeod? And I think he sort of danced around the question, and rightfully so, because it's a sensitive topic. But if I could be completely honest on my show, Michael McLeod, he ain't coming back. And I would be stunned if he's given another chance at the NHL. I think his career in terms of playing in the National Hockey League are all but over. And right now, things take priority over hockey when it comes to Michael McLeod. But shifting back over to what the Devils need, they do need some more bodies in terms of forwards who can work those dirty areas and also do a little bit of scoring and do a bit of the face-off work to take pressure off of someone like Jack Hughes. And like I said, I'm open to bring back a few familiar faces. I just talked about Tyler Toffoli. You can also consider Colin Miller. I think he was one of the best defensive-minded defensemen for the Devils this past season. If I could shift my focus over to there momentarily, I think you should really think about bringing back Colin Miller. But I narrowed it down to 3 players that are set to become unrestricted free agents come July. The first one is Adam Henrique, Rico, a fan favorite who probably had one of the biggest shots in New Jersey Devils history. That game-winning goal in overtime to defeat the New York Rangers in Game 6 and punch the Devils' ticket to the 2012 Stanley Cup Final. A lot has happened with Adam Henrique ever since Ray Shero controversially dealt him away. He's now 34. He's getting up there in age a little bit, but he's still vital. Because with the Ducks this past season, he appeared in 60 games. He had 18 goals, 24 assists for a grand total of 42 points. And he was actually very productive on a lackadaisical Ducks power play. He had 5 power play goals and 5 power play assists. And here's something that I think is a little underrated about Rico's game, is that he's not afraid to play somewhat aggressive. He had 59 hits and 57 blocks. And something that really jumps out to me, his face-off win percentage, and he had a percentage of 52.9%. And do I want him back? I know this is a hot topic amongst the Devils discourse because it seems like we have this discussion year after year after year. People want Adam Henrique back. They think fondly of him, and for good reason. I can understand it. And some people are just saying that it's not realistic. But I want to give you guys some hope. I actually did speak to a Ducks media member while I was out in Anaheim covering the Devils and Ducks game. And this person said that Adam Henrique is open to returning to New Jersey, but it comes down, do the Devils want him back? Because is the love reciprocal between Henrique and the front office? That's the main domino piece. And I've actually spoken to Henrique before, and he had nothing but positive things to say about New Jersey. In fact, he says it's one of his favorite places to return based on all the memories and the people he has met throughout his career. So if you need any reassurance, Henrique loves New Jersey. And I think in terms of Henrique as a player, he's very dynamic. He can play center. He can play winger. I just mentioned that he was very productive on the power play, and he's also good on the PK. And I think that would be great to add to the Devils roster. And you don't just have to put him alongside Jack Hughes or Nico Hischier, but let's be completely honest. I think he would thrive with someone like Jack Hughes. But once again, we're focusing on depth. I think you could put Adam Henrique on the third line, and I think he's going to be productive because he was productive on a lackadaisical Ducks roster. In fact, I think he was helped carrying that team for a few years. And right now he's with the Edmonton Oilers, and he's kind of lost himself a little bit because the Oilers are stacked. I don't even think he's playing that big a factor in the playoffs, but he did score his first playoff goal in over 10 years. This season with the Oilers, he appeared in 22 regular season games, 6 goals, 3 assists for a grand total of 9 points, and he has a face-off win percentage of 55.2%. I am open to bring back Adam Henrique, and it's not just a fan service. I think Adam Henrique can still add a lot to the roster because, like I said, he can play winger, he can play center, he's good on special teams, he plays the full sheet of ice. I think he still has a lot to add despite getting into his mid-30s. I found an article on the Hockey Writers, and here's the projection as to what you can expect from Adam Henrique in terms of a contract. Once again, he's a pending UFA, but you could possibly sign him to a 3-year, $4.2 million deal, which is very cheap, if you ask me. And I still think he's not really slowing down. I think he can still provide a few good years of service. Adam Henrique is definitely an option for the Devils. And I'm not just saying that to appease the Devils discourse. I genuinely believe that Adam Henrique would be a solid addition to this roster. So I think Adam Henrique would be atop of my list in terms of former Devils players that could possibly reunite with the organization. And we'll talk about some other players that come to mind. But before we continue, I want to tell you guys about the Game Time app. I've used it before to purchase myself some NBA and MLB tickets. Save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. Save even more time when you choose a section and let Game Time choose the seats. All in pricing, toggling this feature shows the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. Get a great view from your seat in the app before you buy. The lowest price guarantee or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in ticketing industry with Game Time ticket coverage. That sounds pretty good if you ask me. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Okay, let's bring up sort of a wild card player, and that is Tomas Tatar. Here's the thing. I don't think I've ever done a season recap for Tomas Tatar last year because he was the only Devils player that did not conduct an exit interview. And if you're wondering why, it's because he totally forgot. He was actually in the building that morning, but he dipped out before he got a chance to speak to the media. I don't think it was intentional at all. I think that was a genuine mistake on his end. But Tomas Tatar had a productive season last year with the Devils, and he was one of the, I would say, underrated players as to why the Devils had such a historic season. He appeared in 82 games. He had 20 goals. 20. That's kind of impressive for someone who's getting up there in age, if you ask me. 28 assists for a grand total of 48 points. And here's something that's also very underrated about Tomas Tatar. He wasn't afraid to make some hits here and there as he racked up 65 hits. Last year, like I said, underrated asset, and he was very good on that line with Dawson Mercer, with Nico Hischier running the center position. And I think it depends on the line mates that Tomas Tatar is with, because when he wasn't paired alongside Nico Hischier, sometimes he struggled, but he was still a good player. And what happened during the course of the offseason? Because I was wondering, why was it taking Tomas Tatar so long to latch on to a new team? Because I knew right away, once the Devils got Tyler Toffoli, there wasn't going to be any more room for Tatar. Because it's like, where do you slide him in? And also, Tom Fitzgerald was adamant about leaving a spot open for Alexander Holtz and possibly another young guy in Utica, because they can't marinate in the AHL forever. And he also got a new agent, which is why he sort of went a little silent, and he was trying to work out a deal with the Devils. But once again, once they got to Foley shortly before the draft, it was all but over. This year for Tomas Tatar, he played for two different teams. He played for the Colorado Avalanche, but he didn't really do all that well. He appeared in 27 games. He had 1 goal, 8 assists for a grand total of 9 points. But he started to redeem himself a little bit once he was picked up by the Seattle Kraken, and I thought that was an underrated move by the Kraken organization. He appeared in 43 games, had 8 goals, 7 assists for a grand total of 15 points. In total, he appeared in 70 games this past season, 9 goals, 15 assists for a grand total of 24 points. Not really on the same pace as he was with the Devils. But once again, if you pair him alongside the same line combo and have him next to Nico Hischier, I think he could do pretty well. Now that Toffoli is gone, call me crazy, but I do see a role now with Tomas Tatar because a spot opens up. Like I said in the first segment, Toffoli sort of needs to play a top six role if you want him to be effective because he's really only focused on trying to get the goal. And you sort of have to carry him defensively because he's not the fastest guy out there. But Tomas Tatar, in my opinion, fit like a glove when he was paired alongside Nico Hischier. And I think you can kind of get away with it. Obviously, you have to think about, like, what are you going to do with Dawson Mercer, Eric Haula, Jack Hughes once he comes back from shoulder recovery. There are some question marks, but the question mark isn't as big if Toffoli was on the roster. And this goes back to a few silly season discussions I've done in the past when I talked about Brady Tkachuk or Mitch Marner. Yes, it's always nice to go big game hunting, but I don't think the Devils need to break the bank for certain players. I think you can go cheap and you can still get some valuable assets, a mundane, a diamond in the rough. And I think Tomas Tatar fits the bill a little bit. Yeah, he struggled a little bit in Mile High City and Emerald City, but if you return him to the Garden State, who knows? Maybe he'll see a bigger surge. Tatar is 33 years of age. And similar to a few of these players I'm listing in this discussion, he is a little older, but he can come cheap. You can honestly sign him to a 1-year vet minimum. And I think there you go. You still get a diamond in the rough type of player. You get someone who can give you a few goals here and there, who can be a spark plug, and you don't have to break the bank. And if it doesn't work out, you can just make him a healthy scratch, and it's not really going to hurt you in the long run. So I think Tomas Tatar and reuniting with Tuna, it'd be interesting. I don't think it's likely to happen, but I'm open to Tom Fitzgerald bringing back Tatar, especially since he saw great success during the Devils' historic season just last year. And speaking of finding that diamond in the rough or that needle in the haystack, there's another player in the same division as the Devils that could also be vital, and this guy is not afraid to play aggressive. All right, who is this player? Plays in the same division, a former Devil. It is Stefan Noesen. He is 31 years of age, and I think the Carolina Hurricanes got somewhat of a steal with him because he's approaching the end of his 2-year, $1.525 million deal. So he wasn't being paid all that much, and I think he earned himself a bit of a pay increase. But I did some research, and according to the hockey writers, it might be a struggle for the Hurricanes to re-sign him due to their cap situation, but we'll see what happens. However, focusing on Noesen's game, here is a guy who's not afraid to throw his body around and work the dirty areas. This season, he appeared in 81 games, had 14 goals, 23 assists for a grand total of 37 points. But here's something I want to highlight. 118 hits. The Devils need that type of player on their roster. Yes, they got Curtis McDermott. I talked about Brendan Smith in the previous episode. But here's someone who can give you a goal here and there, never a threat to score on a nightly basis, but somebody who can still be more valuable on the offensive side of things, but at the same time, not afraid to throw his body around, and he might come a little cheap. Noesen got off to a bit of a slow start, but come playoff time, he was quite impressive if you ask me. He appeared in 11 playoff games, and he finished off with 4 goals. I think it's safe to say that he was a bit electrifying in Raleigh, and I think he's a bit of a fan favorite. These are the type of players that the Devils should be looking for in terms of trying to fill their depth. I think Noesen would be an intriguing add just based on his physicality, and he can also be a bit of a spark plug on the bottom six. All these former players I listed, yes, they are former Devils, but I still think they can be vital components on the roster because they can fill a middle forward type of position or a bottom six position, whatever the case might be. And I think they could be good complementary pieces to players like Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, or fill in that role that Michael McLeod unfortunately left. And now you got to try to find a way to bridge the gap a little bit. All these players bring something unique, and we've seen it work before. Why not try it again? It's not a fan service, but I definitely think these players can add a thing or two to the roster. With Adam Henrique, I'm focusing on his faceoffs and what he does on special teams. For Tomas Tatar, I'm looking at him being a spark plug and can rack up the goals, and we've seen it work on the top six during the historic run. Or for Noesen, I'm focusing on the fact that he's not afraid to play aggressive, and he could sort of fill in like what Miles Wood brought last year, which is physicality, but can be a spark plug and get a goal here or there. Once again, the Devils' primary focus should be on the defensive side and goaltending, but they still need to fill in that role in terms of middle forwards who can bring some physicality and scoring here or there. And they do not have to break the bank for that type of player. I know people want to think big, but all you have to do is just think a little smaller and a little cheaper, if that. Because remember, Shimon the Mets and Luke Hughes, they're going to need new contracts sooner rather than later. And Dawson Mercer, he's a pending RFA. There's definitely a lot that the Devils need to focus on. And I'm hearing that Jacob Markstrom is growing more frustrated in Calgary. So maybe his trade value is going down a little bit, and the Devils can pounce on that. Tom Fitzgerald still has some work to do this offseason, but try to maybe consider reuniting with players that honestly were key contributors a few years ago for the Devils. In Tomas Tatar's case, just last year. And they're still showcasing what they're capable of doing. Let me know what you guys think. Should the Devils try to reunite with a few players from the past, or should they try to start new and look for a different direction? I'm open to either, but why not look at the past and try to recreate it just a little bit? Because I still see something in all of these players. Leave a comment down below if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on podcast streaming service, hit me up on my personal X Page app at TreyMat4 or the show's X Page app at Locked On Devils. As for today's episode, that's all the time I have for you. Continue to stay safe. Have a wonderful day, New Jersey. Go Devils. I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Thanks for listening once again.